Imagine a kingdom on the brink of chaos, where the throne's rightful heir is in dispute. Ah, the Middle Ages. A time when the divine right of kings was as much a part of life as the changing of the seasons. Welcome to the 12th century, to a period known as the Anarchy, a time of civil war and political turmoil in England and Normandy. This era, spanning from 1135 to 1153, was a tempestuous chapter in history, where the very fabric of the realm was torn asunder by the clashing claims to the throne. At the heart of this conflict were two formidable figures, King Stephen and Empress Matilda. King Stephen, a man of charm and affability, but whose reign was marred by indecisiveness and political missteps. Then there was Empress Matilda, a woman of formidable intellect and political acumen, yet she was a woman in a man's world, her claim to the throne constantly challenged and undermined. In 1135, the political climate of England and Normandy was a simmering pot ready to boil over. The death of King Henry I, the last of the original Norman kings, left a power vacuum that was as dangerous as it was enticing. The succession was unclear, and the throne, that symbol of ultimate power, was tantalizingly up for grabs. While the late King Henry had named his daughter Matilda as his successor, a woman on the throne was a concept too radical for many to accept. And so Stephen, a grandnephew of William the Conqueror, seized the opportunity, claiming the throne as his own. But Matilda, determined and unyielding, refused to let her birthright be stolen away so easily. And so the chessboard was laid, the pieces were in place, and a bitter struggle for the English throne was about to unfold. Two figures, each believing in their divine right to rule, each willing to plunge a kingdom into chaos to claim what they believed was rightfully theirs. So the stage was set for a bitter struggle for the English throne. On one side was King Stephen, a man of charm but questionable leadership skills. Stephen was an affable man, known for his charisma and generosity. He was the kind of person who could light up any room he walked into, winning over the hearts of those he met. But when it came to the throne, his leadership left much to be desired. Despite his noble birth, Stephen was ill-equipped for the intricate politics of the court, often making rash decisions that would come back to haunt him. Stephen's rise to power was a tale steeped in ambition and opportunism. Upon the death of his uncle, King Henry I, Stephen saw an opportunity and seized it, despite the fact that Henry had named his daughter Matilda as his successor. Stephen quickly gained the support of the English nobility, who were hesitant about a woman ruling over them. He was crowned king in December of 1135, but his reign was far from peaceful. Enter Empress Matilda, a woman of intelligence, determination, and courage. Matilda was not just any woman. She was the daughter of King Henry I, the widow of the Holy Roman Emperor, and the mother of the future King Henry II. Her claim to the throne was as legitimate as they come, but in a world dominated by men, her gender was her biggest obstacle. Matilda was not one to back down easily. She was a formidable woman, known for her sharp mind and her unyielding resolve. She was a seasoned player in the game of politics, having been involved in the governance of her first husband's lands. Matilda was a woman who knew what she wanted, and she was not afraid to fight for it. Two strong personalities, one throne. The stage was set for a clash of titanic proportions. Now imagine the tension, the intrigue, the power plays. King Stephen, the charming yet inept ruler, against Empress Matilda, the legitimate heir with a steely determination. This was not just a battle for the throne. This was a battle for the future of England and Normandy. As 1135 turned into 1136, the first sparks of conflict started to fly. The Anarchy, as this tumultuous period came to be known, had begun. It was a time when the English countryside was set ablaze with the fires of war, and the echoes of clashing steel rang throughout the land. King Stephen and Empress Matilda, each with a claim to the throne, were now poised for a bitter struggle. The initial stages of the Anarchy were marked by key battles and strategic moves. The chessboard, so to speak, was the entire kingdom, and the pieces were armies, fortresses, and alliances. The first significant clash took place at the Battle of Lincoln in February 1141, where King Stephen was captured by forces loyal to Matilda. It seemed as though the scales of war were tipping in favor of the Empress. But the winds of fate are fickle, and soon they blew in a different direction. In a twist of irony, Matilda herself was besieged at Winchester later that same year. Her forces were defeated and she barely escaped while Stephen was freed. This was a pivotal moment in the war, a seesawing of fortunes that kept everyone on edge. Meanwhile, strategic moves were being made on both sides. Alliances were forged and broken, fortresses were built and besieged, and territories changed hands. Stephen, for instance, built a series of castles across England. These fortresses served dual purposes. They were both a show of power and a line of defense against Matilda's forces. On the other side, Matilda relied heavily on her alliances, particularly those with her half-brother, Robert of Gloucester, and her uncle, King David I of Scotland. These relationships were crucial in bolstering her military strength and territorial hold. But as the year 1141 came to a close, it was clear that the anarchy was far from over. The chessboard was still in play, the pieces still moving. The war had begun and it was clear that neither side would back down easily. Each was determined to fight to the bitter end, to claim what they believed was rightfully theirs. Over the years, the balance of power shifted dramatically. Picture a seesaw on a medieval playground with King Stephen and Empress Matilda on either end. The year is now 1141 and the seesaw is in constant motion. In the early years of the anarchy, Stephen had the upper hand. He was a charismatic leader, quick to seize the throne after the death of his uncle, King Henry I. However, Matilda wasn't one to back down. She was the rightful heir, after all, the only legitimate child of Henry, and she had a powerful ally in her half-brother, Robert of Gloucester. As the years went on, the tide began to turn. Matilda's forces captured Stephen during the Battle of Lincoln in 1141, a major turning point in the war. Suddenly, the seesaw tipped dramatically in Matilda's favor. She was declared Lady of the English, and it seemed like her claim to the throne was finally secure. But Stephen wasn't down for the count. His wife, Queen Matilda, also known as the Good Queen for her diplomatic skills and tireless efforts, rallied his supporters. She managed to maintain control of parts of the kingdom and even negotiated Stephen's release in a prisoner exchange for Robert of Gloucester. The seesaw tipped back and forth, neither side able to maintain control for long. The war was a grueling contest of endurance, with both sides experiencing victories and defeats. It was a time of chaos, a time of feudal warfare, with no clear end in sight. In 1147, Stephen managed to regain control of key territories, including the city of York. The seesaw was once again in his favor. But as the decade drew to a close, the fortunes of war were still very much in flux. Just when it seemed like the end was in sight, fate threw another curveball. The tides of war were about to shift again, and the seesaw was far from finding its balance. In the final years of the anarchy, desperation and determination marked every move. The once mighty and steadfast England and Normandy had been reduced to a playground for power, where the forces of King Stephen and Empress Matilda clashed with relentless fervor. These were not just battles for the throne, but for the very soul of these medieval lands. Every hill conquered, every castle seized, and every village defended was a testament to the sheer will of the people embroiled in this conflict. The air was thick with anticipation and uncertainty as the final years of the anarchy unfolded. In the heart of this chaos, King Stephen and Empress Matilda were more determined than ever. Their respective forces, wearied yet resolute, pushed forth through the muddy fields and the stone walls of their adversaries. The echoes of their battle cries, the clash of their swords, and the rallying calls of their leaders filled the air, a haunting symphony of struggle and survival. These were the years of the final battles, where victory was not merely about gaining the throne, but about ending the cycle of violence and instability that had plagued the lands for nearly 2 decades. The desperation of the situation was palpable. Every move was a gambit, a final play in the high-stakes Game of Thrones. But as with all things, even the anarchy had to come to an end. The last battles were fought with everything that was left. The last strategies played out in the grand chessboard of war. In the end, it was not just about King Stephen or Empress Matilda, but about the people of England and Normandy, who had endured years of turmoil and strife. As the dust settled, the fate of England and Normandy hung in the balance. The anarchy had pushed these lands and their people to the brink. What would emerge from the ashes of this conflict was yet to be seen, a new chapter waiting to be written in the annals of history. Finally, in 1153, after nearly 2 decades of war, a resolution was reached. The once thriving lands of England and Normandy had been ravaged by the relentless tug-of-war between King Stephen and Empress Matilda. The stakes were high, and they both knew it. The throne wasn't just a seat of power, it was the heart of a kingdom, the symbol of an era. The path to the resolution was as tangled and treacherous as the conflict itself. It was a dance of diplomacy, a game of chess where the king and queen were not just pieces, but players. A series of events, each more pivotal than the last, began to unfold. There were alliances forged, promises broken, and through it all the spectre of war loomed large. But just as the darkest hour comes before the dawn, so too did the final act of this power struggle pave the way for an eventual peace. The details of this resolution, the specifics of this turning point, are a story for another time. For now, let's focus on the aftermath. The anarchy, as it came to be known, left its mark on both England and Normandy. The once flourishing landscapes were scarred by the scars of battle, the echoes of war. Cities were left in ruins, families torn apart, and the societal fabric was frayed at the edges. But from the ashes, a new era would rise. The impact of the anarchy was far-reaching. It reshaped the political landscape, altered the course of history, and set the stage for a new order. The power dynamics shifted, the balance was tipped, and the ripple effects were felt for generations to come. The anarchy had ended, but its echoes would reverberate through the halls of history for centuries to come.